Welcome to the table, the podcast where we share real stories, struggles, and victories as we walk together in faith. Today, I'm getting to share a little bit about my own story. Well, mine and Justin's story. And while it is fun to reminisce, I've also realized how much I love being the one asking the questions and not necessarily the one answering them. However, this isn't just about Justin and I. Jenna and I really wanted to spend some time talking about dating and engagement and what it looks like to honor the Lord in those seasons too. No worries if you're getting tired of all the love talk. There's a lot of non marriage wisdom sprinkled all throughout this episode. So, as fun as it is, I hope it is just as encouraging to you too. All right, here we go. Here's this week's episode.
Hey Jenna,
Hey,
we are back again. I'm
yes.
excited to continue this love theme, and today I'm gonna get to talk about Justin and I and a little bit about our story, but we really want to talk some about dating and engagement and what it looks like to honor the Lord in those times. And I've
Hmm.
shared this with you, but I'll share this with our listeners. One of the fun things about doing this podcast is I get to see not who is listening, but information about them and their ages. And it's interesting to me that we have people that are our age. A portion of our listeners are our age, but then we have people who are older than us listening and younger than us. And it's really pretty equal across the board. And so I think we would be missing an opportunity if we talked about marriage. And we'll talk about singleness a little bit next week. But if we didn't take some time to talk about dating and engagement, and before we hit record, you made a comment about what you're finding in the word.
I'm noticing that it talks about marriage a lot and it talks about love a lot, but it doesn't specifically all that often mention dating because that really wasn't a thing. And maybe there's a point to that. Maybe there is a point to that, that you do have to have love and friendship and serve well together before marriage is even a something to talk about.
Yeah, I was looking for something in the Bible a couple of weeks ago. It probably had to do with this podcast. And I was like, I for a specific situation in marriage, like looking for scripture for that. And I was like, it's not here. And it's not here. Like I know the Bible very clearly outlines the purpose of marriage, our roles as husband and wife. It gives us a lot of information about how our marriages are a picture of the way Jesus loves the church. It gives us all this information, but I had this realization that really my focus as a wife, like a safety net, is that I focus on my relationship with the Lord. And
Right.
if I am becoming a godly woman, if I am obeying what he tells me about loving others and serving others and how, the fruit of the spirit and the different things that we should be thinking on, whatever's
Mm.
lovely, whatever's pure. If I'm doing that, it's gonna transform me into a godly wife as well. It's going to equip me to be what Justin needs me to be as his wife. And so I think about that in dating too. The focus
Hmm.
isn't how do I be a good girlfriend or how do I be a good fiance? It's how do I become a godly woman or a godly man, right? Like it
Right.
works for both of us. And then we're
Hmm.
we're kind of set up for success almost
Right.
when we take on other roles.
Hmm.
So, a little bit about Justin and I. Our story is not as entertaining, I think, probably as your story. We did take a little bit longer. We've known each other since we were kids, and we grew up in the same church. Our families were really close together, and when we were in middle school and high school, we had a lot of people around us that were saying, "Oh, you should be together. You should date. Uh, you should start a relationship." And we were I was so against that. Like, I have distinct memories saying out loud that I would never marry Justin Collier, because I just felt like that's what everybody else wanted me to do. And in my rebellious spirit, I was not doing it. And so I went away to college, and I came back home, and we were still just really good friends. And he was a person I would consider one of my best friends throughout my whole childhood and even as a young adult in college. And when I came back home, I we spent some time together like we normally did. And it just got to the point where he said, are we gonna do this or are we
Oh,
not? We're either gonna take this and we're gonna start this relationship, or we're gonna dial it back because there's no space for other people. And if we're
right.
supposed to be in relationship with other people, like there, I'm not gonna be your best friend. And so we need
Mm.
to figure out what that looks like for us. And it was really, it was a kind of smacked me in the face a little bit because I didn't feel ready to make that commitment. I didn't want to like take that leap of faith. But ultimately, I did. We did together. I would say Justin was way less hesitant than I was. He was ready for that, and I needed to get on board. But then, similar to you, not quite the same timeline, we went from friends to engaged to married within a year. And it was really easy. We knew everything there was to know about each other. We knew we'd grown up together. We really were best friends. And so um, it wasn't that we had to learn each other. We had to learn how to support each other in a new role. And that was tricky. I will say our engagement period was brutal. And he's heard me say this time and time again because it was the first time that we were in like a stressful situation, and it was just hard. I remember pulling into Sonic and telling my best friend, I don't know what I'm doing because this is falling apart. This is not working. We're not on the same page. I don't know what's happening. And she very, very graciously talked me down off the cliff and encouraged me that I did know what I was doing, that we had full support of the people around us, and this was going to be fine. This was a temporary trial. But I do know in that quote unquote dating, because if you ask my mom, she would say that we didn't date because I felt like that was a thing you did in middle school, and I was not going to be a grown up date who had a boyfriend. But we were in that dating period, and even before that, I had this woman in my church that I look up to and respect deeply, who gave me a copy of an Elizabeth Elliot book, and the book is Passion and Purity. It's such a good book, and at the time, I was in a relationship, and I was a smidge annoyed that she thought I needed that kind of resource. But I clung to the words in that book, and it really changed my heart uh, all around dating and what it was going to mean to be married and how to be a wife that supports her husband. I loved it. It was so good. And I want to read this quote because I think about myself when I was 20. How old was I? 22,
Yeah.
and not really sure what was going to happen with Justin and I. And this just really, I think this is what had to happen in my heart for me to be ready to accept this new relationship. This is Elizabeth Elliot, and she says, I realized that the deepest spiritual lessons are not learned by him letting us have our way in the end. but by his making us wait, bearing with us in love and patience until we are able honestly to pray what he taught his disciples to pray, thy will be done. And I think
Hmm.
in that time, I didn't want to wait. I wanted God to very, very clearly say, please marry Justin. He is your husband. Move forward with that relationship. But uh, I had to kind of sort things out. I had to change my heart and get myself in a place where I was going to accept whatever it was that he gave me because his way has always will always be better than any plan that I create on my own.
Hmm.
When I said Elizabeth Elliot, you got a really excited face. Do you love Elizabeth
I,
Elliot?
I love her. She's really good. She's such an encouragement, especially not just to married women, but to just Christian women. She's so encouraging and supportive, and many of her books and sayings and quotes have outlined much of my life.
Yeah, so good. I have since I received this book. It's well loved, but I feel like I've sent it to so many people who are in that single dating engagement phase of life as an encouragement to them because it really did mean a lot to me and make a huge difference in just in how I looked at marriage and
Hmm.
my responsibility in that. So we got married really quickly after that. We got engaged 6 months later and we got married 6 months later. And that first year of marriage was a breeze. People talk about marriage like that first year can be a little rocky, and we did not feel that. We had fun. It was a good time. We didn't have any trials, nothing really holding us back. But then we had some children and it rocked our world. And some of that growing that we probably could have done during that first year, we had to do very quickly when
Hmm.
we had new responsibilities and new roles really as mom and dad. And I think for people that are engaged right now, that that's something I didn't put a lot of thought into or focus on during my engagement. What it would look like to have children, how our roles would change depending on the jobs that we had or the schedules that we were on. And so one of my encouragement, some of my encouragement for someone who's engaged is to have those conversations and
Yes.
really be thoughtful about that. Not that I would change, I absolutely would
Right.
not change my decision, but we could have been more prepared and a
Hmm.
little more ready to tackle some of the things that we had to tackle pretty quickly in
Ask
marriage.
the ask the hard questions before. 100% ask those hard questions, and even questions that aren't hard. Where are we going to church? And for some of us, that was an easy decision. I mean, we were already going to church together. But for some people, that's not. How are you going to raise your children in church? Where are you each outside of having children? Or even if that doesn't happen, where are we going to church? How are we handling finances? How are we going to put things together? What was apart and that God has joined together? What does that look like? Are you basing your decisions off of scripture, or is it just what your parents did or did not do? I think all of those things are very important in that season of engagement, or even some in dating, especially as you get older, because it's just wise to make sure that you have a plan and that it's founded either on God, His Word, that you're both like-minded. I think that's huge that you were able to look at some of those things, but it does help to have those hard conversations before you're in it, smack dab in the middle of it. Like, what
Yeah.
toothpaste do you like to use? Because that can be a thing. Do you
Yes.
want the flip top or the screw top? It does sound silly, but
Uh-huh.
those are things that you are going to have to, you got to mesh. You've got to come together as one. And no, you don't have to have the same toothpaste, but I do need to know which one to buy you.
Yeah. Or if you prefer the generic or the name brand, I think that's a disagreement we
All
have in our house
things,
still.
all the things. Yes.
Yeah. So we have talked about this a lot, building your relationship on the foundation of Jesus. And I'm curious what your thoughts are for how, if you're dating, what are you looking for in the person that you want to marry?
I wish that I hadn't dated so much looking back because there wasn't a purpose. I think I was so focused as friends were getting married early. I had friends who got married at 19 and 20, started having
Same.
kids right after that. And I thought, ooh, I'm behind. I don't even have a serious boyfriend. And that became almost my goal of making sure that I had a boyfriend and that we were somewhat serious. And I needed him to be a good guy because I knew that's what was right. And I knew that I needed him to go to church, but I really wasn't as intentional with dating as I should have been. And to be completely honest, the way that I see things now and how God worked in my situation, and I really hope that for everybody, that it comes naturally and that the Lord, because you're so focused on the Lord, that He just opens that door up and there, that's the one. I
Mm,
know it won't happen like that for everybody, but that really is something that I wish for my children and I wish for all of my friends and young friends that, that we have and know. Um, but to be intentional in dating, if there are things that you know that you're not okay with, do not go into dating that person. If you see
yeah.
that they're not in church, and if you see that they're not willing to come to church with you prior to even dating them, be careful. Yes, you can win people over, but if you're having to do that while dating and possibly becoming engaged to somebody, all of these things get very hard. The Lord wants us to be like-minded. And so before you get too serious with someone, you make sure that all those things that you've prayerfully been considering for a husband are there in that person. Otherwise, you need to wait until the Lord works on him or brings you someone else that is.
Yeah. I agree 100%. I think that I would say if you're not interested, this is in my experience, I think, my in my old age that I have formed this opinion, and I don't really know. I think probably like you, for sure, in like high school, I dated to have someone with me. Like
Hmm.
I just wanted a boyfriend. I just wanted a companion. I wasn't dating to marry them.
Right.
Um, but I something I will probably teach my girls, something that I believe wholeheartedly now is that if you wouldn't consider marrying them, like you're wasting your time because there's not really a reason
Yeah.
to date unless unless you're looking
There's
to marry them.
also there's also the issue there with at 16, 17, 15, 14. At
Right.
that age, you are blinded by not your heart, your eyes. You are
Oh
literally
yeah.
blinded and you can't make wise decisions because I looked at certain people and thought, I could marry at that age, as a teenager, I would
Yeah.
look at them and say, I could marry them. That he is all these things. But that doesn't mean that I need to be dating him and throwing all of my time into that one relationship. At that age, all I really needed was a bunch of friends, a few good friends, a bunch of friends. I just needed to live life as a teenager, and I should have been growing closer to the Lord instead of worrying about, this relationship or that relationship, or we broke up and everybody knows about it. You need to be intentional, but I know at teenager age, there's very little intention. It's just what feels good in the moment, and you're sowing your wild oats, so to speak. But nowhere in the Bible does it tell you to do that. Nowhere.
Yeah.
And we'll make excuses that every teenager's got to have a teen. a few teen years. Um, no, they don't. They get to be young but don't let anyone look down on you because you're young. Be lifted up and be godly. What more could I have done or, you know, I don't know how to word this in a way that it really speaks highly of me, but I sure wish that I could have used that time to be sold out for Jesus rather than being sold out on impressing other people or certain young men.
Yeah. And I don't want someone to misunderstand that, like, and I won't speak for you, but I can speak from my own experiences. Like, there is not any relationship that I was in that I regret being in. I might have made some different choices if I knew then what I know now, but I
Yes,
feel like the Lord has used every single situation to mold me into the person that I am today. And so it's not that if you have dated a bunch of people prior that the Lord won't use those experiences.
right.
He will. But those are probably going to come with some heartache. Like, I know in my story, there was a lot of heartache and healing that had to happen before I was ready
Hmm.
to be in a relationship with Justin, my now husband. And so I think just where I am now, looking back, I agree with you 100%. Just be intentional. And you don't have to be um, with someone to grow closer to the Lord. There's not a timeline. The Bible doesn't give us, like, you got to be, in a relationship by this time or it's not happening. Like, you
Right.
just have to, the closer that you're walking with Him, the the more obvious I think it will be when you meet that person and when that time is here. Like, He's gonna put that on your heart.
That's right.
I have this pastor, I've listened to him talk about dating a lot, and he uses this scripture in First Timothy 4. Um, First Timothy 4:12. And it's exactly, I think it's the one you just referenced. It says, "Let no one despise you for your youth, but set the believers an example in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity." And I've heard him talk about that as like a checklist, right? When I'm looking
Hmm.
for someone that I want to marry, are they an example in the way that they talk? Can I see their faith? Are they living a pure life? I lost my spot. Are they behaving in a way that a believer should behave? And just using that to walk through some of the things you want to see, right? We want to see the fruit of the spirit. If you are a believer, that's what you want to see in the person that you
Yeah.
could potentially marry. You want to see
Right.
those fruits. Any godly wisdom that you would want to share with women in this stage of life? And I think about this question because our world has very, very different views about dating and relationships. And I probably went along with some of those when I was a young adult because that's just was the thing
What you
to
do.
do. And I wasn't, you know, as spiritually mature and in the word like I should have been. So what would you say to what kind of godly wisdom would you give women in this phase?
I think the world that they're living in is that we're living in and they're having to date and be engaged through is hard. The
Yeah.
social media age where everything has to look perfect. I hate to break it or be the one that says it. This world is not perfect. And marriage
Yes.
is not perfect at times. Dating is far from perfect at times.
Yeah.
I think my wisdom would come from from the word, and that it tells you to not be of this, like not be in this world. You were in this world, but don't be of it.
Yeah.
And you should look different. We're called to be peculiar. If you are dating and look just like the couple beside you, and it's not godly, then I would stop and kind of recollect your thoughts and see where you really want that to go. Because again, this world is not perfect. Things are going to be difficult and hard. And if you don't have a foundation in the Lord, it's going to be very difficult. And you need to make sure that the person that you're looking for, the person you're dating or wanting to be engaged to, is going to be that leader for you, is going to take you to the word, is going to say, well, how, let's pray over this. If you're not praying together over things, slow down and get back to God. And the world's going to tell you that, you don't need God in those things, that follow your heart, do whatever feels right. Well, the Bible doesn't tell you that either. The Bible wants you to be tells us to be filled with wisdom from the Lord. And that knowledge comes from his word. And so if you're ignoring all of the word to fit in or to look perfect, then you're not doing it the right way. I mean, you can do it that way, but
Yeah,
it's a
by all
lot
means.
easier. It's a lot
Yeah.
easier to just do it with the Lord in the midst.
Yeah. And I think especially some of the friends that I have that are a little bit older, they're not, young adults and they're still looking for the person that they're gonna marry and they're like, I have all these desires, like to be a mom or to start a family, whatever it is. I have all these things that I want, and so I'm trying to speed up this process and find this person quicker. And I think, to your point, like the Lord already knows. He already
Hmm.
knows what you want and what you need. And He already has a plan. Whatever that plan is, I don't know what it is going to look like. He already knows. And so to continue to take your wants and to lay your heart before Him, He will either answer your prayers with a yes, or He'll change your heart and your prayers will change and you'll start praying for things that align with His will
Hmm.
differently. But it can be really frustrating. I think just continuing to take it to the Lord, like we all should, right? It's
Yeah.
frustrating to be a mom. It's frustrating to
Yeah.
be a wife. And we have to, like, that doesn't change. That's a characteristic of a godly woman to keep
Hmm.
laying your burdens at the Lord and your wants and your desires and let him take them where he wants to take them.
Hmm. And I would also say, don't be discouraged in being single. I wish
Yes.
somebody would have told me that. Like the world looks at, like even my teenagers, it's like they don't have girlfriends. What? What's wrong with them? Why not? There's nothing wrong with that. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 7, I wish that all were even as myself. Each one has his own gift from God, one in this manner and another in that. But I say to the unmarried, to the singles, it is good for them if they remain as I am. But if they cannot exercise self-control, self-control, that's what he's wanting you to learn in your singleness. Self-control. If they cannot exercise that self-control, then let them marry. For it's better to marry than to burn with passion. So there is a gift in singleness. Paul was single and devoted to the Lord, and look how much the Lord used him in that time of singleness because he devoted his life to serving the Lord. And he didn't talk about it in a negative way. He was
Yeah.
almost saying, look at what I'm able to do because I'm single. I wish I would have looked at those seasons of singleness that way, that I get to serve the Lord during this. What does he want me to do? I'm open. I'm available. Let me do what he wants me to do instead of being so caught up in finding the one or who I'm going to date next. If I would have just been devoted to the Lord in that season, it could have been so much more enjoyable. I'm not looking down on that. I learned a lot through that, and I hope that I can be an example to others, but love is patient. It doesn't come immediately. It is a slow thing, and it tarries, it takes time. And I think that it's okay to be single and wait with the Lord because you know his plans for you are good. And if you rush him, then you're not actually waiting with him and you'll miss
Yeah.
out on what he has for you.
Yeah. Or you'll go through a lot of heartache before you get there, for sure.
Right.
I wish somebody would have told me that too. I don't know that I would have listened. I
No.
would like to believe that I would have, but I don't think I would have. But it would have been really, if I could have learned that and used that at those seasons, I think it would be really
Yeah.
helpful. I agree. And
Yeah.
I like that you pointed out in your singleness, you can be fully devoted to
Hmm.
the Lord. And that's not to say that we can't be because we're married, but there are just other responsibilities now that fight for that time. And I know
Yes.
you and Brian and Justin and I, we are finding ways to serve the Lord together. So we're kind
Right.
of, you know, uh, working out both of those responsibilities, but it's still divided. It's
It is.
still there are still new things that we're called to because we're
Right.
married and we have families. And so I'm glad you brought that point forward. I think that's really encouraging.
And just because everyone says you should do something in this world doesn't mean you should. Make sure the people
Amen.
you're just make sure the people that you're getting your advice from or your counsel from are people who are godly. Don't take it from Facebook. Don't take it
Oh,
from
yes.
social media. Please, in real life, find godly people and listen to them and watch them and glean from them. And it may sound like I'm older now, and so hear myself talking and I know that I sound old, but really, God's put those older people in your life for a reason and for a purpose. And if I could glean wisdom from those older women and men around me, God's put them there for a purpose. And I would rather take the wisdom from someone godly than anyone else in this world.
Yeah, same, for sure. I mean, he's given you them.
Hmm.
He's given you the people around you to help lead you in making those decisions, especially these big decisions,
Hmm.
like who you spend the rest of your life with. It's a big
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah.
Big decision. Okay. Any other advice that you would give that we haven't already talked about yet today?
Um, I would say you were talking about y'all's first year of marriage and how it was a breeze. And something that came to mind when you were talking about that is our expectations. We all have expectations, not just in dating, not just in marriage, but in life. We all set these expectations and expect them to be met. And sometimes the bar's really high with those expectations. And other times we're willing to lower our standards in order to get what we want. And God has good standards and expectations for you. He wants the best for you. And I love that about him is that he's not changing even when I do. His expectations are not changing and mine should not need to lower just because I can't find the perfect person to date or marry. God has someone for you. So don't be willing to change everything you're feeling or everything you're doing because you can't find what you're looking for. Because you followed the Lord, Catherine, and because we waited on the Lord in those certain situations with our marriages, it made that first year for you a breeze. You'd already built up that relationship and that foundation in the Lord, and He did make it a breeze for you. And I think it's because we learned to set our expectations or our hope and our plans, leave those in the hands of the Lord.
Ugh, that's so good. There's this verse in Psalms that's one of my favorite, I think because I have kids now. And it's a phrase that says your boundary lines fall in pleasant places.
Mm.
And I think about that for my kids, like if I tell them not that they can run wild, then they think they're so free. They think they can do whatever they
Yeah,
want. But when I say don't run in the street, they think I'm being mean, but
right.
really I'm protecting them. And I just think
Yes.
about the Lord doing that to me, like the boundaries he's put in place for me, the 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 expectations that he has for me and the way that I act and behave in all of these different seasons, they fall in pleasant places. They are for good purpose and good reason. And I can trust that. I can trust him for that because he's
So true.
faithful.
So
Yep.
true.
Oh, this was so good. Thanks for having this conversation with me today, Jenna. And next week we'll be back to talk more love.
Yep. Thank you for sharing your story.
Yep. See you later.
Thanks for coming to the table. We hope today's conversation encouraged you as you seek Jesus in the big moments and the little ones. You'll find all the resources we mentioned today in the show notes. Feel free to share this episode, leave a comment, ask a question, or share your thoughts with us. Next week on To the Table, we'll be wrapping up the month of February by talking about how to love others well. It was such a sweet conversation to record, and I hope you enjoy it as much as we did. It's fun to think back on how others have shown love to you and how you've been able to love on them in return. Until then, we hope some of what you've heard today will encourage you as you walk through the rest of this week. See you next time.